Hey, this is Warren from Honed by Jones, and I'm here in my workshop in Carson City, Nevada. And this is a Chicago cutlery knife. I think this belongs to my lady, to my sweetheart. I think she's had it for 10 to 15 years. She used to sharpen it with a steel. Now I keep all of our knives sharp, so I sharpen it sometimes with a ceramic whetstone like this Shapton glass whetstone. I sometimes sharpen it with a belt sander like this Kalamazoo 1x42, and sometimes I sharpen it on my Tormek. So I've got several different ways. Honestly, I walk out into the garage. I walk over with one of this. This is one of our regular kitchen knives. We only have like 5 kitchen knives. I walk out into the garage with this knife, and I think I want to sharpen it, so I just grab whatever tool that is available. Oops. And I sharpen it with that tool. And as you can see, it's pretty darn sharp right now. I think the last thing I used to sharpen it was a Shapton Glass 4000 grit stone. One of the things, if you're a belt sander guy like me, so I use belt sanders sometimes, I use the Tormek sometimes, and sometimes I use whetstones depending on what the client would like. But if you're a belt sander guy, you'll hear that belt sanders ruin the edge of knives. And especially if you have a YouTube channel, you will definitely get a comment that that's the case. Now, interestingly enough, this knife, this not very expensive Chicago cutlery knife, is, like I said, maybe 10 to 15 years old. I have now, in the last 6 months, sharpened it on whetstones, sharpened it on my Tormek, sharpened it multiple times on a belt sander, and as you can see, this knife is still a knife functioning as a knife. And so it always makes me curious why people say that a belt sander will ruin the knife. What I think they might be saying is that there is potential that if you use a belt sander, you could be more likely to ruin a knife, right? If you're heavy-handed with a belt sander, there's a better chance that you're going to affect the shape of the blade of the knife. There's a better chance that there's a potential that you could overheat a knife. But the way I work, I don't use a lot of pressure on my belt sanders, so I have not had that issue at all. I can still cut through paper nice and clean like you just saw. I can still cut through butternut squash with this knife. I can still cut through meat with this knife. I can cut through cheese with this knife. Whatever I need to cut through, despite the fact that it's been sharpened with a belt sander multiple times, it still functions perfectly as a knife. So here's what I think this conversation is about. I think this is a conversation about honesty and whether you're honest with your customers or not. So my customers sometimes ask me, sometimes they don't, but sometimes some customers will. They'll say, why do you have belt sanders? And why do you have that other machine? They usually don't know the name of the Tormek. Why do you have that other machine? And why do you have the whetstones? Which one do you use? And I'm always honest with my customers. Like let me digress for a second here. If I go to get my oil changed, I know that they have different grades of oil that I can put in my car. I just got new tires put on one of our cars earlier today. 4 new tires plus the spare. So I just paid for 5 new tires. I knew that I could choose an inexpensive basic tire. I knew that they had mid-range of tires, and I knew that they had super high-end tires that I got. Now this is an older car that we just kind of use for driving around town and driving in the area, so I got the lower price tires. But I knew going in that was my choice. So the question is, when it comes to talking to my customers and talking about their knives, am I honest with them? And the answer is yes. If they ask me why do I use a belt sander sometimes, I say it's all about efficiency. I sharpen a lot of knives and tools, and I need to get through them quickly, and I have a goal of a certain amount of money I'd like to make per hour. And so I use the belt sanders most of the time because they're the fastest, most efficient sharpening tool that I have. A woman came up to me at the farmer's market last week and she said, "Don't those machines ruin the edge of a knife?" And I said, no. And I told her about this Chicago cutlery knife. I said, there is potential that a belt sander could lessen the edge retention. So the knife may not hold a sharp edge as long. I said, it doesn't ruin a knife. I know because I've used belt sanders on my knives over and over again, and I've never ruined any of them. But yes, it could lessen the edge retention. So that's why you may want to pay more for me to sharpen your knives on the Tormek or sharpen your knives on whetstones. That's the difference. I tell her the truth, I give her the choice, and then she makes the choice, just like I did this morning when I bought those new tires for my car. So anytime someone tells you that a belt sander ruins a knife, think about the broader context and let them know that that's not necessarily the case. This is Warren from Honed by Jones. My customer just drove up, so I gotta go. Keep your knife sharp, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Later.